This week, going to be getting into chapter 5, which is about managing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. They have a philosophy of unconditional acceptance, which can become a personal philosophy on overcoming emotional problems associated with addictive behaviors. A lot of times, when you're using or drinking, you tend to be in that negative state of mind, and you got to realize that, like, a lot of times, like with the those negative emotions and everything that we deal with and everything, it's like you gotta instead of downgrading yourself, you gotta look at your mistakes, and like instead of saying something like I'm a total failure, realize that, like, okay, I made a mistake and everything, and own it up to it. And instead of saying like I'm a total failure, you can say like I made a mistake, I need to own it and learn from it. And some of the stuff you can substitute for is like unconditional self-acceptance and unconditional other acceptance for other people, unconditional life acceptance, basically like know like your life path that you may get into your addictive behaviors, but you can get out of it and break the cycle of your addictive behaviors. And there's two categories of beliefs. There's the rational beliefs, which are true, make sense, and are helpful. And then there's the irrational ones that are untrue, don't make sense, and are very harmful. And that's when there's usually ones that you're using when you tend to go into when you are using or drinking. And there's a quote for the unconditional acceptance from the book, from one of the facilitators. It's I accept myself because I'm alive and have the capacity to enjoy my existence. I am not my behavior. I can evaluate my behavior, but it's impossible to accurately and honestly evaluate the complexity of myself. I strive for achievement only to enhance the enjoyment of my existence, not to prove my worth. Failing at a task doesn't make me a failure. I can choose to accept myself even if I am unwilling or unable to change my character defects, because there's no law of the universe that says I can't. My self-approval cannot come from pandering to an external source or bowing to any external authority. My self-acceptance can only come from within me, and I am free to choose it at any time. That basically means you have to getting a lot of the irrational thoughts tend to be on the external factors, which we have no control over. So we need to kind of remove that and internalize stuff and look into how we can fix ourselves instead of worrying about what anything else, anyone else does or say. And then some of the stuff for the irrational beliefs are demands. I have to succeed at this. If you get a new job, for instance, you walk in and oh, I have to be the best that there is. And when you realize and flip it with a rational belief, be okay, well, I'm new at this, so I need to learn first. And to be in order instead of I have to succeed, I need, and be replace that with I have to learn about this. And that would be getting into disputing those irrational beliefs, which again are not true. And you tend to get in, I said, question it. An example they have with drinking, the rash is when drinking, example would be I'll have just one drink, but you question it, it'd be will I have just one? And the answer would be most likely not. And you have to go down that road and okay, well, I'm not going to necessarily just have one. For instance, with me, if I were to walk in a bar and start to drink and everything, oh yeah, I'll just have one. Chances are I'll have one, oh yeah, I'm feeling good, then I'll have two, and then four, and then it leads me back down to drinking again, which is not very conducive to a very productive life. And they also get into word exchanges for to get into the switching the irrational behaviors and thoughts into like rational behaviors and thoughts. Like instead of saying must, like you can really switch it to really want, prefer, or choose to. Instead of saying can't, I say choose not to. Uh, and like you can always say, instead of saying always, you can switch it for often. And you get into like a statement exchanges, like for instance, I must be perfect. You change it to like a I really want to do well. Again, like with the job analogy, like you're starting a new job, and instead of saying I must be perfect, you're like, okay, I really want to do well. And another one is like you are a bad person. You change that for I don't like your behavior. The third example would be like everything is terrible. You change that into like things aren't the way I want them to be. So you switched it into irrational from the irrational, like okay, like things are like bad. You switch it like okay, well how can I fix it? And then like the emotional exchanges, which is the third part, is like the negative emotion, like I'm so depressed, like switch it to I feel sad. I'm really angry, you switch to I feel annoyed. I'm envious, you switch to I feel unhappy. So that way you can take a step back and, like I said, push that pause button to like look at it like, okay, why do I feel like this with the all the statements that you exchange them for? You get down into the root and like you start questioning the irrational behaviors and switch it over to like start to try and get into the rational thoughts of switching over to that. And they have like what they call the ABCs for emotional upsets. Like A would be like the activating event, like what triggered the emotion, like what got you angry or what got you sad or whatever. B is like a belief about event, what you believe about A. C is consequence of the rational belief, like how I feel and how I behave as a result of B. D would be dispute the irrational belief, a more helpful belief about A that replaces the irrational belief that you started in A. And E would be effective thinking change, is like how I feel and act as a result of D, my new rational belief about A. Again, flipping the script on how you can change negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors into positive ones. And coping statements during a crisis would be like to help improve frustration tolerances. Like this is upsetting, and what I can't. But I can't. Like an example would be this is upsetting, but I can stand what I'm doing. Another one would be like to calm an angry rage. Example would be I'm really annoyed. It's okay to feel this way, and if I don't have to act on my feelings. Third one would be to curb anxiety and depression linked to self-judgment. You can say, I made a mistake, I'm human, I forgive myself so I can move on. And like, they have like another part that moves on, like solving life's problems. Talking about managing problems becomes easier once you accept that there are some people who will never accept your change, and that there are some situations that are out of your control. Like for instance, like biggest lesson that like can learn that you can learn is that you're only in control of yourself, and like you pretty much don't have any control over anything else and everything. So like it helps like once you realize that like okay, I have control of myself, so that way if something upsets me, I don't go off the hinge. I can take a step back and repeat that, pushing the pause button in life, and like getting back into the ABCs, and like go through that, and like try to like work your way through mentally instead of just flying off the hinge. You take a step back, work your way through like the ABCs to get that rational thought. And you can get into like this is where like getting into like going into therapy and going to, like maybe like a group setting, like the smart recovery meetings. you can get those outside perspectives from some people who may have already gone through similar situations, so they can help you, give you a different perspective, so you can work through that stuff easier. And the five steps to the problem solving would be: first, to define the problem, and then two, you brainstorm ideas on how to go through the problem. Then you would evaluate your brainstorming section. You would select a path forward, and then you'd create like a written plan for the fifth and final part of it to go forward. And then like you're constantly you have to constantly update it, because sometimes some things don't work, and like you'll have to chuck an idea and replace it with something else that like may come down like down the road like a day or two later that may work. So it's just constantly like having to be on top of like going through the cycle and everything. And another one of the last sections in it is relapse prevention, and how to like avoid dangerous situations, like stuff like association. Like if you're driving by like your favorite bar, and like you want to like maybe if you're going to work, you go by your favorite bar, and that like associates like, oh yeah, maybe I can go in there for a drink. Maybe you find a different route that takes you away from that bar. Another one would be boredom. Like you have like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks off vacation or whatever, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, you don't know what to do, so you kind of fall back into that old behaviors of maybe going out to drink and everything. So like you may want to like get into like different behaviors. Like instead of going out to the bar, like what I do is I work out all the time. I do lifting, I do yoga, so I find other activities to relieve that boredom. Third one would be like your emotions. Like maybe like you run into an old drinking buddy, and that brings back emotions, like how much fun you had when you were drinking. And what you may want to do is like kind of like play back the tape, and like, okay, well, if I go drinking with him, it leads me down that road that I don't want to go down and everything. And then like another one would be like you kind of fantasize about like a fun time. Like at least like for me, like the first few years of drinking was kind of fun, so I would fantasize like, oh yeah, I remember going out to the bars and having so much fun in the beginning. But then like I said before, I have to replay the tape and realize like, oh well, it led me down the road of addiction several years later. So it's like, is it really worth it? It's like, no. And like another one would be frustration. Like sometimes you get so frustrated with like people, places, or things that like are out of your control, that you go and use, and you got to realize that it's really not worth it in the long run, because you're only hurting yourself. And the sixth would be like an opportunity. Like you know, are at a wedding, for example, and it's an open bar, so you have an opportunity to drink. And but again, you have to replay the tape and realize that like it's not worth going down that road again. And the big thing that they end with is like get help from relapsing. Like first would be get medical and psychological help. Another would be like living with awareness on like the problem of the immediate gratification. Like getting a like a six-pack would be like great, and like enjoy yourself in the moment. But then you gotta realize you're sacrificing your future self enjoyment out of life. You got a third thing would be stimulus control. Like maybe like you're someone who has issues with like photosensitive to like certain like video games. They have those warnings on the like for people that may suffer from seizures or something. So you may want to like stay away from stuff like that may trigger you, something like that. Number 4 would be getting into like the ABCs that I talked about before. And I use the example of substituting activities. Like for me, like instead of like having like going on vacation, instead of going out to the bars, I substitute the activity of going to a bar with maybe going to the gym or going to a yoga class or whatever. Another good one would be distractions. Like again, instead of going to bar, maybe you sit at home, catch up on a TV show you watch. Like with being a big Star Wars fan myself, you could catch up on like the Clone Wars, or like the Book of Boba Fett, or any of the other like shows that are going to be coming out with it. And the eighth one would be like irrelevant decisions. decisions that pretty much puts you in high risk, like, oh yes, I'll just go this way, and that takes you to buy your favorite bar, realizing that you gotta stop that and maybe find a different route to and when you're going if you're going that route to go grocery shopping, for example, instead of going by your favorite bar that you used to go to, you go by a different road to get to the same place, and you go back pretty much the same way. And sometimes when the last one that they use is lapses and relapses can be an opportunity for growth. So if you do, for instance, maybe you do run into someone and you have a drink and you have that small lapse, you can use it as a growth opportunity to kind of okay, step back and how did I put myself in this situation? What were the leading factors? And then you can take a step back and kind of look at and you can write it down in journal and I've mentioned before, and use it as a way to look back and learn from it. Okay, well, these are the factors that led to me lapsing or maybe relapsing this time, so I know to stay away from those triggers next time and everything. So with that said, next week I'll be getting into chapter 6, so pretty soon we'll probably be coming up to shorter chapters, so I may condense the next few chapters together to go through these chapters a little faster. So hopefully next time it won't be 2 weeks before I get to the next one. Till next time.